Coach, with the departure of Dre McCray, who's kind of been taking the lead as far as returns? It could be kicks or punts.
Jacoby obviously did kicks last year. He's doing both right now. Bryce Morgan's been back there. Oliver Miles. Trying to think who else. AJ McCarty. So we've kind of had about 4 or 5 guys. Um, you know, I'm excited kickoff return wise because Jacoby really he did some things, put us in some really good field position last year, and had a chance to score a couple. And so he's kind of learning punts, and we got to get our punt return going better. Like I said last year, I thought we'd have been better, but unfortunately that falls on me, and we'll find somebody. We've been working on it since actually February, trying to find that guy. So we'll find somebody.
Of the newer guys, who's been the biggest sponge of just absorbing all the piece of information that you can dish out and then have it executed on the practice field?
You know what? Really, all those. Grant kid from Purdue, he's been doing good. Pollock's been doing really good. Romelo's, those guys they understand they have to do it in the NFL, so they're kind of taking into my stuff. So, I'll be honest with you, there's not really, anyone. Balfour, all those new kids have been doing really good. Leighton Stone, I've been so impressed with him. Deaver, just being guys that should really just be going to prom this week. I've really liked what they've done. They've show every day they've come to work, and I'm not the easiest to get along with. And I kind of require those guys to be locked in and try to get something out of this. And I've been really impressed. There's not anybody that like I said, I could keep going on and on about our new guys. They've all done good. Chetty O'Feely has been one that was here that's really kind of coming on for me. And then you got all the guys that've been here, so I don't want to get into those guys, but it's been really good. I like the roster. Joey's done a good job. You guys know how he is with culture, and he's mixed those guys in really really well with the rest of our team so far.
Coach, which player in special teams has had the biggest hit so far this spring?
Ooh, we haven't really we don't really hit in my stuff. My stuff's more drill based, and so it's really we hadn't done anything hitting wise for me. So I can't really say that there's anybody I could really go after. They've all done pretty good. I would say that Adam Hill, kind of in our punt blocking stuff, has really impressed me. Just because he's a strong kid, athletic kid, but he actually throws a pretty good punch in there. So I would say if I was going to compare what probably Adam punch wise.
What is your biggest frustration on the kicking game so far this spring?
Obviously consistency. I'm like I said, I think I'm more of a, I put a lot of pressure on those guys mentally so they can come through late in the game situations. And, I think just 2 guys, obviously, Upton being new, to Lubbock, Texas, dealing with the wind, Stone being here, just never had opportunity to do it. So kicking wise, it's been, I've grinded those guys pretty hard. I think Jack's kind of where I think he's going to be at. He's being here last year, and the struggles he had probably the first, then he kind of calmed down the last 11 games of the season. I was, he was frustrated. It's like anything, but young guys or new guys, coming out here, it's just the way we do it. I'm either gonna let them sink or swim, and hopefully they can swim.
Why do you think that this team is closer to a Big 12 championship this year?
Well, I think obviously, when you got the athleticism that we have on the field, the guys that we have back, in some key positions, obviously quarterback, losing Taj, but those 2 young guys are adding Quentin Joyner. Those guys they got some dudes back there. Then the receivers, offensively, and the offensive line is better. Then defensively, those guys, man, they're flying around. I can't say that, technique, and I don't really watch that. I just watch what, those guys when they get off the ball and then how they run to the football. It's pretty impressive. So that's really what you want in a team to kind of be like at this point of the year.
Going back to pushing those guys on the kicking side of the ball, what kind of coaching are you giving those guys, especially with Upton coming from Buffalo, not having to deal with the West Texas wind and stuff like that? What kind of coaching are you giving those guys?
You've got to learn. That's the one thing. That's what I loved about the guys we've had here, from Wolf to Gino, Austin McNamara, Reese, all those guys. You got to figure it out. Gino was here 3 years. The first year he didn't. He was here, just didn't kick because we had Trey. But, kicking out here is a different beast because every day you're going to get a different wind. And then you throw in some red dirt in your eyes, as a matter of fact, as you're kicking, and then some snow. So it's just different, and they got to learn. It's kind of like, a guy that's a good pool player. You got to learn how to hit different balls, different shots. And it just takes some guys longer than others, but I think they'll get it. And then, it's definitely an advantage for us come game day when you play out here because we get a different wind every week. So, and it's just like I said, the kicking is a mental beast. And you know what? I think I'm as good as there is to challenging those guys mind-wise. And we'll get there. It's just like I said, it is what it is.
Especially with the West Texas win, and you talk about consistency. Is there, some guy in the room that's just kind of adapted to that win and just kind of stood out in terms of consistency?
Not really. I think they've all had their, they'll both tell you it takes some getting used to. Just like quarterbacks, I think they have to deal with it as well. It's just different, But that's never going to be an excuse come Saturday for me.
Going back just on the size that you lose with Taj, is it safe to say that this running back room may be a little more speed driven this year?
I think, Taj is just an all-around guy. These guys got, they've got game-breaking ability as well. They're just quick. Both of them, all three of them are really quick. They see things fast, and they can run. And then, I think Coach Leftwich is doing a good job getting the ball out of the backfield, throwing wise, probably more than we have in the past. So I think just the different combinations of how those guys can play, using two backs more than we have, I think it will probably be a thing as well.
And then you mentioned Leighton Stone as being a player that you've been impressed with. Can you go into, I guess, a little bit more of specifics? Is it his game or is it his character, a little bit of both?
I think it's just his mindset. When you get a new kid in here, obviously that still should be in high school. I think it's the physicality aspect of it, but there's not one time where I've seen him shy away from anything that we're doing drill-wise. He's made some really good plays. He jumps in there. Him and Deaver both, they really do. They've done some things. I've been impressed. It's hard for me with the new guys to ever really compliment them because they just don't know what they're doing. But they don't know what they're doing, and they're just going 100 miles an hour. Now, they're messing up a bunch, but they're doing it going full speed, which I think as a coach you want to see.
In terms of kind of getting more out of that punt return game, are there certain tweaks that you're implementing in the spring that you're going to?
Yeah, we've really never been much with going live. We've gone some half line stuff, but it's just kind of more, to get punt return started, you got to win the line scrimmage and outside. Outside's so hard. It's no different than covering a receiver, for those guys. But you got to keep them at the line second for 3 seconds, and that's pretty tough to do. I mean, it's a trait that you got to work, and we've worked it more this year than I have in the past. Just kind of tweaking some things with getting some guys that are probably a little bit longer that are used to doing that, just because it's easier to hold on the guys up there. So I think it'll show up.
Kenny, what if Upton and Stone charted?
They're both right. Upton's been about 73%, and Stone's kind of 60. I think he's right at 66%, which for him is, obviously better. He was, he's in the 40s last year. Gino was, he was right about 75 last year, and Reese. So, in spring, obviously you're going to kick a lot more balls. So you kind of want to be that. You want to get closer to the 80%. I think that's just, but it's natural that, especially for these guys trying to figure it out that haven't been there. It's no different than you getting a new kid. They're gonna struggle early, and then hopefully when we have their summer, they're here kicking all the time, and then we get into fall camp, that number kind of goes up. But it's that they're not too much farther off than where we've been at. They've done well in our game situations. Upton's hit a 53, a 50, a 51. I think Stone's hit a 50. But now don't get me wrong, they've also missed some easy kicks too. We've missed a couple 35-yarders and 30-yard. Those are the ones that keep me up, because that's just, you got to make those. But the longer kicks, it's good in those situations to hit them. But those gimmies, you can't miss those.
Anything else for KP?
All right. Thanks, guys. Good seeing you guys.
You too.